You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tian. In addition to this show, I write for the Packers Post and Cheesehead TV. And Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. And Sean, the draft is over. We are now into the next phase of the offseason. But I know you have something you want to mention first.
Of course, always, Gil. Before we get started, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Yeah, Gil, the draft is wrapped up on paper. Looks pretty good for the Packers, and it could lead to a lot of hard decisions down the road, including maybe a somewhat difficult decision made on Thursday by the Packers, but maybe not so much of a difficult decision and more so putting something in the hands of a veteran on the Packers.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It was announced by NFL Network that the Packers will not be exercising the fifth-year option on Eric Stokes. And look, I can totally understand why, given the circumstances. You got to take into consideration the fact that what has he played? 12 games over the last two seasons combined. Yeah. That's out of a possible 36 games if you include the playoffs, so that's not a good percentage. He had a great rookie season, but then his play has been very inconsistent since then. So, to me, you may want to keep him after this year, but to give him that, $12+ million 1-year deal that the fifth-year option represents does not make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the thing is with Eric Stokes, we've seen him play at a high level where his rookie year, he had 55 total tackles. He defended 14 passes. He had interception, his lone interception of his career. And remember, Jair Alexander missed most of that season because of a shoulder injury he suffered early that season in 2021. Eric Stokes became the number one corner very early in his NFL career, and he was pretty damn good. And it's a bummer that he has not played at that level since. And ever since he suffered that brutal injury in his second year at Detroit, even the first half of that year, he wasn't playing that well. But he suffered that brutal injury. It was very tough to come back from, clearly. And then he dealt with hamstring issues last season. It didn't look quite right last year. So it was a bit of a no-brainer by Brian Gutekunst not to pick up his fifth-year option. And with Darnell Savage, they picked up his fifth-year option after his third year. And that was, I felt like the Packers were getting kind of cute with that, where now it's like, hey, this is probably a good call. Don't get cute here. Don't pick up the fifth-year option. And it's something where it had to happen. You can't guarantee a fifth year for Eric Stokes, a guy who has not been very available the last couple of years in Green Bay.
Yeah, and if you think about it big picture, you'd have to pay him a little more than $12.4 million for that 1 year. And you can't spread that out. There's no signing bonus. There's no incentives. It's just 1 year cap hit of, $12 million plus. And that's just not going to sit well, especially if the guy is injured again or doesn't return to form. So it makes sense. But here's the thing that I was thinking about. And, I wrote about this for the Packers Post coming out on Friday. They could do something similar to what they did with Jordan Love last year, where they did not pick up his fifth-year option, but they gave him a 2-year deal with a lot of incentives so that if he does play really well, he'll make maybe potentially even more than the fifth-year option. If he doesn't play particularly well, he won't cost you very much. You could also cut him after 1 year. And if you make it a 2-year deal, for example, you at least can spread that signing bonus out over 2 years and reduce the cap hit. So if the player plays well, that's a win-win for both Stokes and the Packers. If he doesn't play well, the Packers could easily walk away from him. And you could always sign him to a deal like that, in October when he's proven, hey, I'm back to form, I'm playing well, I'm healthy. And, if he ends up on IR in week 3 and is done for the year, obviously you're not going to re-sign him. So I think this move gives Gutekunst and the Packers a little more flexibility in addition to being logical.
And the thing is, Matt LaFleur even said, he was asked this week specifically about Eric Stokes and said he's looked great this offseason. He looks healthy. And that Stokes along with Christian Watson, they were the notable guys who had the hamstring issues last year, and they went to go see some specialists and got some extra attention to see what is going on and try to figure out the problem. So if that's figured out and he's back to full form, that could be a very good thing for Eric Stokes, where now he's entering a contract year. And guys get motivated when they're going into a contract year. They're going for that big payday. And like you said, you talked about a win-win situation. This is definitely a win-win for the Packers. It could be a win-win for Eric Stokes too. And if he can't stay healthy again, if his play doesn't improve, Packers move on without any huge ramifications whatsoever. But if he does play better and he shows off that 2021 form, that it's a much deeper quarterback group, it's a much deeper defensive back room. You have him in-house. You can get an extension done with him before he has a chance to hit the open market in 2025. And Packers have a lot of cap space next year. About estimated 60 to 70 million. That's the estimations. Now, that's not accounting for Jordan Love's potential new contract that's coming up. But this is just something where, hey, if Eric Stokes plays great, the Packers can afford to keep him. If he doesn't, they move on and they don't have any significant cap ramifications. So more so a win-win for the Packers, but could be huge for Eric Stokes. And if he plays like a guy who's who plays his best in a contract year, it's going to be very good for the Green Bay Packers in 2024.
No question. And here's another wild card that I think could benefit, again, both the Packers and Eric Stokes. Joe Barry's defense did not play to his strengths. If you're playing 5-10 yards off the receiver at the line of scrimmage, that is not the way Eric Stokes is most effective. He likes to press. He likes to get, right up close to the receiver and then stay with him. You got to hope that Jeff Hafley's defense is a much better fit for Eric Stokes' skill set than the one Joe Barry was running the last couple of years. So get him healthy, get him in a defense that is more suited to his skill set, and maybe good things can happen.
Well, I'm going to kind of do a slight transition from that into the draft from this past weekend, Gil, because it seemed like there was a pretty heavy focus on finding guys to fit Jeff Hafley's aggressive scheme, or what appears to be an aggressive scheme coming to Green Bay. And real quick, in case you missed the couple episodes that we recorded last week after the first and second days of the 2024 draft, the Packers drafted Jordan Morgan, the offensive lineman from Arizona, in round 1. Their 2 second-round picks, linebacker Edrin Cooper of Texas A&M, safety Javon Bullard from Georgia, as well as in round 3, running back Marshawn Lloyd from USC and linebacker Tyron Hopper from Mizzou. Now, day 3 was interesting, Gil. They had 6 picks total. They drafted safety Evan Williams out of Oregon in the 4th round, offensive lineman Jacob Monk out of Duke in the 5th round, safety Ketan Oladapo of Oregon State in the 5th round as well. 6th rounder was offensive lineman Travis Glover of Georgia State, and they had 2 7th-round picks, Tulane quarterback Michael Pratt and Penn State corner Kalen King. And why I mentioned Jeff Hafley, why I wanted to mention that is it seems like there's a lot of DBs, new DBs in that room on that side of the ball, and it looks like they all have a similar mindset. They know how to attack and they know how to hit, and it seems like the Packers drafted these guys with a purpose in mind.
Yeah, and look, that's how you have to do it. And we have seen, like, for example, they drafted 3 safeties. This is how Brian Gutekunst attacks a position that he feels needs reinforcement. You add 3 safeties. You add numerous offensive linemen. You add 2 off-ball linebackers. You attack it with numbers. If even 1 or 2 of the 3 hits, you're way better than you were a year ago at that position group. So I think it makes sense. And the question now just becomes whether or not, how many of these guys are going to hit, and how soon, if they do hit, will they have an impact on this defense?
And competition brings out the best. And that's what is so awesome about this, where again, we talked about Javon Bullard after day 2, and the guy attacks. Edrin Cooper, if you're looking at his tape, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you're on social media looking at the Edrin Cooper tape that a lot of people are examining right now, that guy attacks and he is not afraid to hit, and he's an excellent blitzer. Evan Williams, you talk about the safety from Oregon, 8.2 relative athletic score. He's only 22 years old. Last year at Oregon, he started 13 games for the Ducks, a very good Oregon team that probably was a playoff team if there were more than 4 teams that qualified for the college football playoff. But he led the Ducks with 82 total tackles, 4.5 sacks, which led all Pac-12 defensive backs, 5 tackles for loss. The guy attacks. And then Ketan Oladapo from Oregon State, from the Ducks' rivals, the Beavers, 8.18 relative athletic score, and has experience at corner and safety. He was 3-time All Pac-12. He was formerly a walk-on at Oregon State. And coverage isn't really a strength, but he's an aggressive downhill player. He's a bigger safety at 6'2", 216 pounds. And it's very fun to see where the Packers made a point. Hey, these DBs aren't going to be afraid to hit you. No matter what, they're not going to be afraid.
Yeah, and they're not going to be afraid to blitz because a number of them have good blitzing records from college as well. You get the feeling Hafley is going to be more aggressive in that respect than Joe Barry was. And, between the athleticism, the versatility, and the aggression, we're seeing kind of a makeover of the Green Bay Packers defense.
And I think not only that, you're going to see a lot of competition in that secondary as well. Penn State corner Kalen King has a chance to be Carrington Valentine 2.0, where that guy was tremendous in 2022. Gil, you're a Michigan fan. I'm an Ohio State fan. We saw plenty of Kalen King watching our football teams play. The dude was a stud in 2022. He had a pretty down 2023 season. And after the 2022 season, he was projected to be a first-round pick. He was projected to be a first-round pick, and he was one of the final picks of the weekend in the draft. And if you can unlock that kind of potential that he showed at Penn State in 2022, that's going to be a huge benefit for the Packers defense as well, and just huge for the secondary. Besides the defense, or even including the defense, Gil, what stood out from day 3 of the draft, and maybe the draft in general of the Green Bay Packers in 2024?
One, Brian Gutekunst, he definitely addressed needs. There was no question about that. Yeah. He went for players who had versatility, who could play multiple positions. He went for players who were leaders, 4 captains drafted by the Packers in this draft. So you could see that leadership was definitely, character was part of the equation. They like athleticism. They like versatility. And, Goody did what he said he was going to do. For all the talk about pre-draft, trying to mislead other teams, he said he was going to draft a quarterback on day 3. He drafted a quarterback. He likes to, use multiple picks at positions of need. He definitely did that. Interior offensive line, safety, off-ball linebacker. He did what he said he was going to do. The slight emphasis on defense, but I like the way he sort of broke this draft down. There were a couple of picks who would be considered reaches, but at the same time, they were Packers types. They were Brian Gutekunst, tailor-made to the way he likes to draft. So as they say, you got to trust your own board.
I'm telling you, they made a significant point. Brian Gutekunst made a significant point to improve the run defense, because the Packers have been gashed for years when they're having to defend the run. He made a point to do that. Xavier McKinney was obviously so coveted because he's so good in coverage, and he can fly all over the field, and a really good free range safety, where it's kind of Nick Collins-esque in a way, where Nick Collins was so good as a center fielder back there. And you hope you have that with Xavier McKinney, where that guy can cover quite a bit. And then you have a lot of guys who can rally to the football in front of the Xavier McKinney. But what stood out to me, though, you talk about the positional versatility, where Evan Williams, he could play all over. Ketan Oladapo, he has experience at corner and safety. Javon Bullard has experience at nickel corner. Edrin Cooper is an excellent blitzer and an excellent off-ball linebacker. You can kind of move him around quite a bit as well. Jacob Monk, the Duke offensive lineman, who, of course, we thought the Packers were going to draft instead of Grant. Well, everyone expected Graham Barton, but, of course, they drafted Duke offensive lineman not named Graham Barton. And Jacob Monk is an athlete on that offensive line, 9.74 relative athletic score. and he's played all over the offensive line. Kind of unique that he's allergic to cold water. I don't know if you caught that interview where he can't do cold tubs, so he breaks out in hives, but he said the snow will be okay. Hopefully it's not a problem in December. Jacob Monk is a guy who's going to possibly compete for some snaps on offense, and it's going to be a really good battle. He's bringing in guys who are going to bring in a lot of competition. Another thing that I thought that stood out to me was, of all the draft picks, didn't draft one wide receiver, didn't draft one guy for the defensive line, which tells you the Packers feel pretty good about where they're at in those two position areas.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, one other thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about a couple of these guys, Kalen King in particular, who were really good the year before they came out and struggled the year of their draft year.
Yep.
The Packers have a habit of doing that as well.
Yes, they do.
I'll name 3 players on this roster who fit that description: Rasheed Walker, Dontavian Wicks, and Jordan Love.
Yep. Bingo, bango, bongo. I mean, because Jordan Love, his final year, what was it at Utah State? He threw a lot of interceptions, but he had a completely new group of offense around. There were 10 new starters on that offense in his final year at Utah State. But then there was a coaching change too. Right. There was a change in the staff, and it was a matter of, if you looked at those interceptions, I remember if you looked at those Jordan Love interceptions, like, hey, I got to be a hero. I got to take more chances because that's our only chance. And obviously the Packers saw something where, hey, this kid's talented, but it's a matter of just kind of just fine tuning him and polishing him up and making sure we have some time to get him ready. But I will say this too, not drafting a defensive lineman, that's good news for Kenny Clark's future in Green Bay, which makes me very happy. I love good linemen, and I'm very happy that they didn't draft a D tackle. I hope Kenny Clark signs a new extension, maybe before training camp, maybe before the start of the new season coming up. But if Kenny Clark's in Green Bay for the long haul, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I am too. I have always been a big booster of Kenny Clark, like the way he plays the game. And the Packers do not hand out too many third contracts to non-quarterbacks, but I think Kenny Clark certainly deserves one.
And I think preseason is going to be fun coming up too, where we're not going to see too much Jordan Love. I would assume he's got the starting quarterback job, but hey, Sean Clifford against Michael Pratt, the Tulane quarterback. Michael Pratt, this kid's fun, man. He 6'2", 217, and had an 8.22 relative athletic score. He took the call for the Packers while swimming in a pool on draft weekend, which is pretty awesome. This guy helped Tulane beat USC in the Cotton Bowl in 2023, in January 2023. Who was USC's quarterback? Number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, who is now with the rival Chicago Bears. And he threw the game-winning touchdown pass in that game. I remember it was a thrilling game with 9 seconds to go. He leads Tulane down the field. They beat USC by 1 point, 46-45, in just a thriller of a game. The dude was a baller at Tulane. He's the all-time leading passer for the Green Wave, the touchdown passing leader as well. Had a really low interception percentage. He was the conference offensive player of the year this past season. Just a really fun player that could make for a very entertaining preseason. The few weeks of preseason that we have, maybe worth seeing what this guy's got.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And it's ironic though, because he's kind of similar to Clifford in that he's good decision maker, good leader, knows the game well, works really hard, but the arm is not elite by any stretch of the imagination. And we saw, with Clifford in the preseason, where had he been playing against first string guys, some of those balls got there a little late.
Oh, yeah.
And, they got there, but against starting NFL players could have been a problem. And again, you can overcome that with learning the game and anticipating and what have you. But that really, the arm strength is the only thing that I think kept both Clifford, both of those guys, only the arm strength kept them from being top draft picks.
Yeah, and with Sean Clifford too, he threw a lot of hospital balls in that preseason. Yes. He was really good, but he threw a lot of hospital balls. But that's why Malik Heath got a spot on the 53-man roster last year, because he was catching all those passes in traffic. And that's what essentially the Packers like, okay, we're going to hold on to this guy because he's making the tough play after tough play. But speaking of Malik Heath, he was an undrafted rookie free agent signing, one of 3 last year for the Packers in 2023. Packers signed 8 undrafted rookie free agents this past week. They signed 12 in 2023, 14 in 2022. They don't have that many roster openings right now, so they could really only sign 8. The undrafted rookies include offensive linemen from South Florida, Donovan Jennings, defensive lineman James Esther from Northern Illinois, Michigan offensive lineman Trente Jones, Ohio defensive lineman Rodney Matthews, Alcorn State running back Jarvian Howard, Arizona State tight end Messiah Swinson, Washington linebacker Raylan Goforth, and Wisconsin long snapper Peter Bowden. Gil, of these guys, the Packers, it's been 19 consecutive years where an undrafted rookie has made the initial 53-man roster out of camp. Who maybe has the best shot to make the roster out of these undrafted guys?
I got to go with Bowden. I think the team needs a long snapper, and I definitely think that you got a Wisconsin guy, you got a long snapper. I think it really would work out very well for the Green Bay Packers to go that route.
And with Peter Bowden, he was a finalist for the Patrick Mannelly Award. Patrick Mannelly was a longtime long snapper for the Chicago Bears, actually, and that award is given to the nation's top long snapper. He was the Badgers' full-time long snapper for 3 seasons, and former Super Bowl champion, current Packer long snapper Matt Orzech had a lot of issues. It wasn't pretty last year on special teams, and Matt Orzech, his long snapping was a bit of a problem last year. It wasn't clean, and that his job is not safe for sure. Peter Bowden's going to give him a run for his money. So it's just going to be interesting to see how the reps get divvied up in the preseason, because you got to think that it's a matter of, hey, Matt Orzech is going to take the first couple punt snaps, first couple field goal snaps, and then Peter Bowden's going to switch off. And it could be a very good competition because Peter Bowden is good at what he does, and it showed that he was very respected by his peers at the college football level as well.
Yeah, and look, long snapper is one of those things that everybody doesn't think about them at all until they start making mistakes.
That's right.
And the fact that we've been thinking a little bit too much about long snapper the last few years leads me to believe that there's an opportunity there. And boy, I missed the days of Brent Good where he was there for like 9-10 years in a row, and he didn't have to think about long snapper at all.
Yeah, and I was looking at the roster, kind of how it stands right now for the Packers, where the outside of Peter Bowden, because he could win that job over Matt Orzech. That could be a very interesting battle. It's not going to be the one that everyone's keeping their eyes on, but it's the football nerds like you and I, Gil. We're going to be keeping our eye on that to see, hey, whose snaps are bad, whose snaps are good, who's doing better than who's doing worse. It's going to be a very tight competition, you would anticipate, but what if Tyler Davis doesn't return to his old form, coming off an ACL injury that he suffered last preseason? Messiah Swinson, he's a big boy. The tight end out of Arizona State, 6'7", 259. If the Packers want to add a mauler at tight end, a guy who can really block on the edge and just be a big body and get in the way, Messiah Swinson may have a shot. And then if you look at the numbers too, on the offensive line, I would think the guys who have their jobs, who are safe, are going to be Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins. I think Josh Myers will get another chance. Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, Jacob Monk. I believe 2 spots are going to be available, and those 2 spots could come down between 6th-rounder Travis Glover. It could come down to Royce Newman, who I think should be cut, but it all depends on the competition. Caleb Jones, who's been a project. He's been in the lab last few years, but maybe the Packers move on from him. And then you have the 2 undrafted rookies, Trente Jones from Michigan, and then Donovan Jennings from South Florida. And all I got to say, Gil, is follow the money, because Donovan Jennings got $100,000 guaranteed from Green Bay.
Yep.
And that's a lot of money for an undrafted rookie free agent. The Packers don't like to spend a lot of money on undrafted rookies. They like to, pretty much their pitch every year is, hey, you have a shot to make this team. You have a better shot to make our team than other teams. And 19 straight years of undrafted rookies making the initial 53-man roster proves it. The guy's 6'4", 323, relative athletic score of 8.93. Started 45 games at South Florida, only allowed 2 sacks and 10 starts last year. I think that guy may have the best shot at making the team, because I think with the 2 spots available, I really think he's going to get one of those.
I think he has a very good look. I would say that that the job is his to lose.
Yeah,
he's the inside favorite going in. Now the favorite doesn't always finish in the money, but I think he's got the best shot heading in.
And with Glover, with Travis Glover being drafted, you would think the draft picks would get more of a more leniency than an undrafted rookie free agent. But late in the draft, 6th, 7th round, that kind of goes out the window. You're really kind of on the same playing surface at that point. Trente Jones is going to be interesting, though, Gil. Your guy from Michigan. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and he only started 13 games at Michigan, but he replaced eventual 3rd-round pick Zach Zinter after he broke his leg in the final regular season game against Ohio State. And Trente Jones essentially played the final 3.5 games. He played very well in the Big Ten Championship, and he played very well in the playoffs. No sacks allowed, only 3 pressures against really, really good competition. And that's a guy who maybe the Packers could say, hey, former 4-star recruit out of high school, maybe there's something we can unlock there, and maybe we can find a diamond in the rough on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think he's got a chance to fill that gap. And, he wasn't a guy who started, but he was a guy who, when he was called upon, did the job and did it well. So, again, sort of a diamond in the rough, and I think there's a chance that he could be a factor at making the roster, especially if he can contribute on special teams.
And we're going to talk more about the depth of the roster and everything like that moving forward. I was just so curious to see so curious to see how these undrafted guys are going to fit in. And I really do think Donovan Jennings, Trente Jones, and Peter Bowden are going to be the ones of these undrafted rookies. These are the guys who are going to have the best shot to keep that streak going in Green Bay, where it could become 20 straight years where an undrafted rookie makes the initial 53-man roster. Remember last year, 3 undrafted rookies made the Packers' initial 53-man roster. That was edge rusher Brenton Cox Jr., running back Emmanuel Wilson, and wide receiver Malik Heath. So should be another entertaining training camp coming up. I can't wait. I'm ready for football. Now that the draft is over, I'm ready for football, Gil. I'm ready for actual football.
But yeah.
But we got something to talk about, at least for a little bit. So, Gil, before we do wrap up, though, with some trivia, what articles do you have coming up on Cheesehead TV, Packers Post, or what are some articles we may have missed the last few days that you got published online?
Well, on the Packers Post, I talked a little bit about Kalen King and his potential as a steal in the 7th round. Mm-hmm. And then on Cheesehead, I did a little feature on Michael Pratt and the battle between him and Sean Clifford for the backup quarterback position. And maybe do the Packers keep 3 QBs this year?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. 3 QBs or 4 running backs. I think it's going to come down to that. And that's going to be a very compelling argument, especially if both those quarterbacks show promise and improvement coming up in the preseason in August. Gil, you ready for some trivia, though?
I am always ready for some trivia.
All right. Well, it's been very draft-centric, undrafted rookie free agent draft-centric. So we had mentioned the addition of undrafted rookie free agent long snapper Peter Bowden to the Packers' current 90-man roster. He's a former Wisconsin Badgers. There have been some former Badgers to play for the Packers in their NFL careers, such as the late Ken Bowman, former offensive tackle Mark Tauscher, and Gary Ellerson, amongst others. Now, if Bowden wins the long snapper job out of training camp later this summer, he'll be the first former Badger to be on the Packers' active 53-man roster since the 2018 season. There were 2 former Badgers on that 2018 roster for a time during that season. Name one of those former players.
Wow.
It's been a while. This is pre-Matt LaFleur era, too.
Yes, it is. Okay, 2018.
One on offense, one on offense, and one on defense.
One on offense, one on defense. Okay, let me think about this. Boy, oh boy.
And one of them is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Well, okay. One of them didn't play for the team for very long.
Yep, both didn't play very long for them.
Yeah,
I'll say this: the offensive player played longer than the defensive player. If you get the defensive player, I'm going to be out. I'm going to be absolutely stunned.
I know the defensive player. I can't think of the offensive player.
It's that so. Okay, go have at it.
Natrell Jamerson.
You nailed it. That's. Yeah. My mind is blown because that guy only appeared in 2 games for the Packers. The former Badger safety appeared in 2 games for the Packers in December of 2018, and he had 3 total tackles in 2 games with Green Bay. And then the offensive player was former Badgers tight end and Milwaukee native Lance Kendricks. He appeared in 32 games across 2 seasons for the Packers, caught 37 passes for 373 yards, scored 2 touchdowns over the course of the 2017 and 2018 NFL seasons. 2 very poor seasons for Packer standards. It was Mike McCarthy's last 2 years as well, so it was kind of a dark time as a Packer fan. But Lance Kendricks and Natrell Jamerson. I can't believe you got Natrell Jamerson. That's ridiculous.
It just popped into my head.
I need you when I'm filling out my immaculate grid every morning. So it's like, all right. Yeah, you usually a good go-to for that for me is for the Packers if they're included. If it's Packers Patriots, Adrian Clem. And Natrell Jamerson isn't quite Adrian Clem level, but that's always a good one. So you get a Packers Patriots spot in the grid, you're welcome, folks.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today, but we'll be right back here next week. So follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packers Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you could email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And it's PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.